Good morning. Here, feeling our aliveness. Not exactly the same, but it's similar to the symbol of nature, right? The moving swirl, right? You start small and big. Yes. Thank you, sweetie. Exactly. That's the seed syllable of life, the essence of life. When you work with a deity in Tibet, in order to call them, reliably work with them, you must understand their seed syllable, like knowing their essence or their phone number. But they won't return your calls if you're not polite and expressing love and praise and things, because they just don't have the time if you're not going to be busy. So life is interesting right now. Life is what animates, and we see it as the animated force of our planet, but you can also extend that sense of aliveness to all things. Just rest without doing, feeling the invisible aliveness. We are a part of nature. We move into smoking the duns out of the cave. We tighten up from the core and then the arms and legs. And more, and then release. Ah, ah, ah. and subtle tightening, releasing, releasing, tightening, mudra of wonder, suspended in space, slightly. Mouth is open, eyes are wide, wonder, and moving into the ever-changing song of reality, played by everything, the music of impermanence. All music is fleeting, and yet somehow we end up with an experience of emotion and connection and a gestalt, a totality of the songs. I love that song because we love experience. At the end of the day, experience is only now. It's all we ever have. But here is the relative aspect, change, and the more ultimate aspect, empty perceiver, come together in this trenchant, poignant sadness of, and just this is where appreciation comes alive, right? How fortunate are we to have each other and to have the Dharma, right? And you know, it won't last forever in this form. You know, may we always come together forever in lifetime after lifetime and enjoy the Dharma and benefit beings. But we know that this particular embodiment, this particular engagement, is a limited time engagement by its nature, right? We have to actually be fully here as much as we can, because this is it. This is the moment. Or as Trungpa Rinpoche would say, this moment is the very occasion. In other words, what we've been waiting for. Right? It's not in the future. It's not tomorrow. It's not next weekend. Right now. And out of that, appreciation for our own life. Wow, who have I been? Like we're holding our life in a chalice. And I bring the fingers together gradually, but at your own pace, just let yourself look back at your life with appreciation this morning. Just appreciation for who you've been and how beautiful you are in your heart. Bringing your fingers together, thinking of memories where you were appreciating something. I remember being really young, appreciating a crab in the sea that was giant that my mom and I saw through a wave, and it appeared and it was like this. We were both stopped in our tracks. We stopped walking because it was so, and we've never forgotten it. Like, remember that crab? It was huge. It was like a blue crab. It was like, man. So that's an example of a moment of wonder, right? And we had to be present. We were walking, we were present. We were looking at shells in the ocean, and it caught us, right? And it's moments kind of woken you up with appreciation. Maybe your first kiss, maybe it wasn't that good. Maybe the first time you remember snow. We're all northerners, sort of, so I don't know if that, maybe we don't remember. Early, just any memory where really shocked you even into appreciation? Laughter with friends? An older person in your life, an elder who was kind? A moment where you were brave? Maybe that's harder to find, but believe me, you've done thousands of brave things. Sometimes it's just, you know what's funny too with brave things? Sometimes you say, oh, I haven't done anything brave. And then someone who loves you would say, well, what about that time? And you go, oh, that? Just appreciate our own bravery. Even if we can't remember a specific thing, it's there, believe me. Beautiful person. Everyone has that beauty in them, the natural aliveness that can wonder, that can appreciate poignancy. I mean, you put those 3 day things together, isn't that a beautiful person? The only difference is some people actually notice it and value it. That's our culture, right? That's all we're doing. And here we hold the lotus seed. They say sometimes say in the Anjali, but here the lotus seed is our aliveness, our life, our beautiful karmic journey, our specific path. We tilt the hands forward, and with a sense of diving in, may I continue to appreciate and experience wonder and value this preciousness of each moment. Boom, dive in. Yay. You know, when the water's cold and somebody dives in and you're like, okay. And you dive in, you're like, I don't want to do it. But then you're so happy you did, right? If you stood on the shore just going, watching everyone frolicking and screaming, you'd be like, oh, I should have gone in. Even if you're freezing, you'd be so happy to have gone, right? Just that initial inertia, as my mom calls it. Initial inertia. A little hesitational bump of, I don't want to. And then you go through it and you're like, I'm so glad I did, right? This thing, I don't know how she coined this, but I remember her bringing it up with me many times. And I thought, man, Mom, that's a good one. Initial inertia. You're initially just sort of sedentary and hesitation a little. And then, but you always go over the speed bump and you always are glad you did. I wish it wasn't like that. I wish it was easier for us as humans. I wish we just didn't have that bump. But we do, most of us, my experience anyway. So how do we identify that and not let it stop us? Uh, Practice, we're learning moment by moment. And so how do we learn? We are gentle with ourselves, with the various parts of ourselves. And we say, you know what? Some of you do not want to get out of bed. Some of you are still in bed. So what are you? How are you? And we just cradle and say, I love all of myself. I love all of my parts. I know we have to work together. We're a team. You're the practitioner cheerleader right now. I love all of you. I love all of me. Even the parts of me that scare me or that I don't understand, I embrace you with compassion. And the warmth, the soothingness, the swayingness, cradle of loving kindness, placing body and mind. The milk of doubtlessness that we suckle in this cradle is unconditional love and positive self-regard, goodness. We are good. it just takes time to be with yourself. You can't rush it, right? Move into the fifth gesture, but we just take a moment before we move into that practice of being like, our being with ourselves, it's like being with a kid. Like if you try to go hang out with them for like 20 seconds, they're just getting started, and then you're like, okay, I did my time, you leave. They're like, wait, don't leave, right? It's too fast. It's not enough. Now, if you hang out with like for 4 minutes, then if they say don't leave, they're not. You see how the voice energy is different? They're like, I know, you're don't leave, but they're not as upset, and they kind of feel cared for. Do you know that what I mean? It's us. We're exactly the same inside of ourselves. We just feel like, hey, how you doing? Okay, fine. I checked the box. So if we look at this as reparenting, you actually have to be there for some time and just be gentle and listen. And it's not about checking a box. It's about actually being there long enough to like go, oh, okay. Now, of course, when we do it for like a minute, when we're going through the whole gestures, that's more familiarization practice, but when you're doing it on your own, enough time. Sometimes it's longer than you want to. Like, all right, we done? and probably the answer would be like a little longer, a little more time. Now here we move from that place into considering, and I say this as like, it's like we're in ourselves and we look up and you look around. Um, this is like maybe overly dramatic, but that scene in the Matrix where like they're like with one person who's plugged into the Matrix and then they pan out and you just see like thousands and hundreds of thousands and the people plugged into this thing. You're like, oh shit. And that's this moment of like, whoa, samsara. So it's not that gross and intense as that movie, but you get the idea is that it's like, whoa, when we look up and look around and think, not only do I have all of these real, needs to be cared for and not ignored, but there's endless beings that I share life with around me that are in the same predicament. I mean, it would be amazing if you looked up and you saw millions of people doing this. That would be like a pure realm. But what you see is people doing this or whatever, right? So if you look up and sometimes they say the Bodhisattva looks with shock or even horror at the level of suffering. That's why they say Avalokiteshvara's head exploded into more heads because it was just too painful to see so clearly how much suffering there really is. But we can open in little bits to it. So, for example, just taking a moment, thinking about people in your life. What is it like to be them right now? Who's someone in your own little circle who might be having a hard time? You might not even know them that well, or they might be a family member, but just think about them. What is it like to be them right now?
For me, it's just so powerful just to look at my screen.
Sorry, I had the volume down a bit. What was that, dear?
For me, it's just so powerful just to look at my screen. There are two other beings here that I can look up and see.
Oh, thank you, Janet. What a good point. We don't have to go far, right?
Yeah.
Right here. Right here. What is it like to be in each other in this moment? And it doesn't have to be like this huge big deal, like, it doesn't have to be like a huge even problem. So, it can just be, what is it like? Wow, how cool that you're alive too. And just, wow, what is your aliveness experience like? I mean, don't get me started. If we could all swap bodies for a day, how weird would that be, huh? Just to like, and like just get to see the world and how we regard it and then come back, and that's really what this practice is kind of about, right? Turns out you kind of can. It's like people have a superpower. They're like, yeah, I don't really want to use that power. Like, you can't do that. And then you're like, well, maybe you can, but I don't really want to. And that's because it's again, that initial inertia to go beyond our own reference points and to, and that, the first thing I notice when I do it is not always, it can be tender and loving. There also can be a little pain when you open to someone, like thinking of my mom right now, having a hard time. Oh, it's like, oh shit, I feel so cozy. I'm wondering, is she feeling cozy? I hope so, but I don't know. And I don't think so. And so then I want to be with her. I want to give her a hug. So that pain is always there and around us in some people. It's not the only point, right? It's not the only thing. There's also beauty of looking at other people's perspective. But I think that's also why this is hard to do sometimes. Because guess what? It's like if there was like a thing where you go, touch this and you'll feel pain. And you sampled like millions of humans, I guarantee most of them would not touch it, right? There's studies that already prove that. We already know that. But it's like, oh, no thanks. Like, we're wired not to feel pain, to get away from pain, right? That's our biological survival instinct. So it's not that now, if we're conscious and lucid, like, I'm not hurting myself, but I'm actually connecting with the larger, powerful, right? The thing is, the pain isn't really just someone else's. We are interbeing. We are inter-are, right? So when we acknowledge that, we're like, oh, you know what? It was never really just theirs. It's just, now that I acknowledge it, it's ours. And from there, we can begin to develop strategies for compassionate, skillful action. But if we're not in touch with this to begin with, everything we design will be from the head up and may or may not be of benefit or will be of limited benefit. When we include the heart, we're like, oh my gosh, okay, wait a second. How you say things, how you do things matters. The qualitative experience, after all, is what life is. It's not, they got the right amount of medicine. Why are they upset? It's like that's not enough, right? Not enough. And then we move into mixing mind with space, section of transmission we talked about yesterday. First, mixing body and mind, feeling the synchronization, the height, width, and depth, the space within, pervasion of awareness. Wherever the body is, isn't the mind there? I mean, isn't awareness the body there? They're always together, right? How would you know you have a body? They're inseparable that way. We feel the inseparability of body and mind, awareness and body, awareness and sensation, and to be more precise, right? Or energy sensation. Then we mix mind with space in the sense of, can you know space without mind? How can you experience that you're in space without awareness? If there's an experience of being in space, it's awareness itself. So they are inseparable. They're not two. Feel the vastness of the space around us and inside of us. And we are bigger. This is our bigger self, our bigger identity, right? The big mind, as Suzuki Roshi calls it. We are what we see. We are what we hear. From this, there's a magnanimous quality that can be developed of indestructible equanimity. Remember, now we're identifying with the sky, not the weather. The weather's there, but it doesn't hurt the sky, right? It's all awareness manifesting in different ways. And space and awareness are the same. Emotion and awareness are the same. If we remember this facet, it illuminates the other facets of experience. And now we move into the precious sunlight, shining the gentle light, feeling the space textural change from the heart and outside, rousing the supreme thought, Laksam. May I be more and more compassionate, trying to be a skillful, compassionate person. Can I develop the powers of compassion, the magical ability? I wish to do this. And feel the feeling underneath us words. And that feeling is what radiates. We bring to mind situations that open our heart, bringing in the suffering of the beings we encounter in our mind and heart, sending out love to heal that. We are alive. We are in the flow of change and impermanence. We are a unique journeyer with a special story. We are kind to ourselves. We are empathic to others. We are mixing awareness and space, being a part of life and the greater biospheric reality. And here then we're sending the one taste of wanting to take away the suffering into the light, and sending out light to heal the suffering. Equal taste, in and out. Rochiga Tonglen. Sometimes this is referred to as bliss. Many kinds of bliss. Here, the bliss is the inseparability of suffering and compassion. There's a strange kind of luminous glow or joy, even though we're experiencing so much sadness and pain. It's confusing to the conceptual mind, but the heart understands it perfectly. It is beautiful to love, and it's beautiful to give love, to be loved, to share love. Wonderful. All you sentient beings, I have a good or bad connection. As soon as you have this confused time, may you born in the western Sugava. Once you're born, complete the blooming zen. Have a great day.